I want to take a look at the Daily Telegraph. This concerns a transgender NHS doctor who got changed in front of women colleagues as claimed to be a biological female. Dr. Beth Upton, who was born male but identifies as a woman, stated in evidence to an employment tribunal that, and I quote, "I'm biologically female." Went on to say sex had, quotes, "no defined or agreed meaning in science." I'll read that again. Sex had, quotes, "no defined or agreed meaning in science." Now, the doctor finds herself at the centre of a landmark case after Sandy Peggy, who is a female nurse, claims she faced harassment as a result of being forced to share female changing rooms with the A&E doctor. This is all going before a tribunal. In exchanges, Ms. Peggy's lawyer, the doctor repeated claims of being female and suggested colleagues were uncomfortable with a trans woman using female-only spaces. And I don't mean this in a nasty way to the journalist. On and on it goes, as it should. But I will probably end it there and just ask, excuse me, if you are a woman, this woman happens to be a nurse, do you think that someone who is identifying as a woman was a born male, identified, so I don't think she's got what's called a GRC, I'm not sure, gender recognition to do it. Should she be able to change alongside you as a woman, a nurse? Susan Smith is co-director for Women of Scotland, a group of women working to protect and strengthen children's and women's rights, and joins me now. May I call you Susan? Good morning. Yes,
of course.
Susan, good morning to you, Susan. I understand you've attended the court, or the tribunal, I'm sorry. What have you learnt from it so far?
It's been quite extraordinary listening to Dr. Upton. The arrogance and the entitlement was oozing off him, really.
Well, it's a she, isn't it? Offering off her.
Well, no.
Well, you see, I think I do want to hear your views, but I must be respectful. Dr. Upton is not here to defend herself. She is recognised, at least in this case, she's being referred to as a she. So I appreciate your stance, but can we at least address it as doctor then?
No, I do need to, because that's not actually true, because the judge in the tribunal has ruled that both Sandy Peggy and her lawyer, and indeed large sections of the press, are allowed to refer to Dr. Upton as a man and as he.
Could we use the word doctor so we don't cause offence?
Well, yes, but I think it goes to that.
But you see, all I would say, Susan, I wouldn't let someone speak very ill of you if you weren't here to defend yourself, and I just have to be aware of that. So if we could use the word doctor, could we settle on a middle ground?
I can certainly try.
Thank you. So what have you learned? You think the doctor is arrogant in the testimony the doctor's given?
Incredibly so. I mean, this was a litany of talking points from an activist. It was nothing to do with medicine or science. And we were hearing that sex is nebulous, that there's no such thing as biological sex. And there was an extraordinary moment when Naomi Cunningham, who is representing Sandy Peggy.
So that's just to remind everybody, that's the nurse who feels that she should be able to change in the room without the doctor being present. Do go on, yes.
That's correct.
Yeah.
And went through a scenario which involved a situation where a man walked into a changing room and how women might have felt and what this man should do.
Is this the Pete character that was created?
The Pete character, yes.
Yeah.
And went right up to the point where Pete is starting to get undressed, which was accepted, that would be unacceptable. But then said, but what about if Pete turns around and says, but I identify as a woman? And quite extraordinarily, and this is the problem with this philosophy, that is the point where the narrative just switches. And the reply to that from the doctor in the cross-examination was, well, in that case, that person, you don't know what's in their head. And if
Pete is a gender non-conforming woman, she may wish to use the women's changing room. She may feel unable to. She may feel open to discussions with her workplace about whether or not that's appropriate. As she went on to say, society is not yet at a stage where it understands gender in a more general way. Susan.
Yeah, that's correct. So it's one of these situations where it seems as though women have no right to object to any of these male individuals coming into our spaces unless and until they do something very wrong. And that was something that Jane Russell, who's
she's representing Dr. Upton and NHS Fife, yes.
That's right.
Yeah.
And she was speaking, repeated quite a few times in the course of this tribunal, both to Sandy Peggy and to Dr. Upton. That
How big a problem is this with the work that you do and your colleagues? Is it regularly that you know women who are harassed, as to use the expression from the tribunal, in this fashion?
Yes, yes, it is. And the problem is, as I was about to say, that until somebody does something, there are a lot of people who don't accept it's a problem. But and a lot of workplace policies have been changed to reflect self-ID, but there's no basis for that in law as far as we're concerned. It's interesting, NHS Fife didn't actually have a policy. So for all that Russell and Upton are saying this was a reflection of the policy, in fact, what happened was Upton went into work and said, I am using those changing rooms. And it was up to the employer then to say no. And I do wonder how far they were worried.
Lastly, how significant do you believe the outcome of this tribunal to be?
It could be very significant. Hopefully it will result in a revision of some of these policies. I think if Sandy Peggy doesn't win, it won't stop there because it's too important.
Susan Smith, thank you. You're co-director of For Women Scotland organisation. This comes down to, in simple terms, whether a woman has the right to get undressed and changed and dressed into nurse's outfit or whatever, without fearing that there may be someone who is a man who is identifying as a woman. Now, the reason I want to stress this is that Dr. Upton is not here to defend herself, but as far as I know, there is no GRC, so it would be, bizarre as it sounds, a situation where if you were in the changing room, and I'm talking now to female listeners, women, and you're in the changing room at, I don't know, John Lewis, Marks and Spencer's, wherever it might be, Debenhams if they still exist, and suddenly I come walking in with a dress and decide that I'm a woman today and I want to try on a dress. I would suggest that women should have that place of, what's the word, safety, if you will, security, a place of security where they don't feel that. But do you agree? We'll take calls on that.